Hello. So today we're going to talk about what exactly is the MBTI, and I guess just more of a brief overview. Everybody's talking about it, everybody's analyzing it, and other people themselves. Um, but maybe we should just spend a minute and think, well, what is this tool really, and what can it really tell us? What is it really trying to tell us? Are we digging into deeply? Are we looking at it in a two-dimensional space and not really considering how complex it really is? Um, so the MBTI is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Um, it's just based on a questionnaire that's trying to figure out what a person's preferences are for the way that they take in information and sort and file that information, so how they view the world and create those world viewpoints, and then also how they make decisions and how they make the decisions that affect themselves and others in the world that we all live in. That being said, um, it's not something that's just so easily, obviously there's a lot of black and white and everything else like that that people try to assign to it, but it's not quite as black and white as people would like to see. And people will obviously when they take an actual test, they'll find that there are different gradients or there are different levels they can score per se in the different areas that show that people kind of fall all over the map. What does that mean from a pinpointing somebody exactly as, okay, well, I'm this function, and or I'm this type, and that's just where I am, and everybody else that falls in that bucket is going to be the exact same as I am. Well, that can't exactly be the case. Really, what you're talking about is people existing on continuums, and you're talking about there was I think a physicist that likened it to a tesseract. And if you don't know what a tesseract is, I mean, you're dealing in R5. Um, it's it's kind of the concept that, okay, you go back, you start thinking, okay, Cartesian coordinates and stuff like that. We're gonna have an X and a Y axis. Now let's throw a Z on there. Now we're 3D. You know, well, now let's throw another variable in there for time, T. Now we're 4D. So we've got time in 3D, and we've got this graph that doesn't exist because now we've got time. Well, let's add another dimension to it. If we get 5D going, if we've got 5 dimensions going, and if you try to actually plot that, that's where you would find each individual's personality. It's just a subset of preferences. But if you can imagine the amount of workspace you're talking about there, um, you couldn't even really properly pigeonhole people into the buckets that people are usually accustomed to pigeonhole people in, if it was just 3D. If it was just X, Y, and Z, if somebody scores in a certain permutation, they may fall into a bucket, into a region. Um, I think that would be a planar region, but they're really not going to be identical to everybody else. So once you start talking about 5 dimensions, people are just so extremely different that the theory wasn't meant, and the indicator model isn't meant to um, directly define. Okay, well, this person is going to be like every other person of their type worldwide. It's just a general idea of what preferences in what order. That being said, the people are very different, but there are similarities. The similarities, I mean, also you can pull back in from the model and say, well, it is a little bit tighter of a tesseract because everybody has all the same preferences. So any of the everybody has the ability to use the same preferences. That's not to say they have the same preferences in the same order. So that is to say that no matter where they fall in the continuum, they're still using the variables to some extent at some point in time, that somebody on the total opposite end of the spectrum would be using. So there is a central point, and actually, if anything, people should be trying to gravitate towards that central point. Yes, you need to use your strengths, and you're going to have your preferred methods of doing things, but cooperation is kind of about giving up on your preferences and meeting other people in the middle. And that kind of central point would be kind of that, maybe that central aspect of humanity. I mean, we all have a little bit of each other in ourselves, and that's how I mean, we're all similar in some aspect. Um, we may be extremely different in most, but we have some aspects that are similar in how we behave, interact, together. So basically, that's my overview of what the MBTI is, on the basic level of, okay, yeah, it's a questionnaire. What is it measuring? But I really think that thinking about it in 3D space, or eventually in a tesseract, 5-dimensional world, a person understands that, okay, it's a lot more complex than most people think about when they talk about it. Even given, granted, that everybody is pulled in by the central point, that everybody does have all the same preferences. So it's not like they're absolutely lacking or there's no crossover. It's definitely crossover. But that's just my 2 bits on the MBTI. And I thought, oh man, that was probably 6 months ago when I read that the physicist had mentioned the tesseract, but that's always stuck with me. I think that's a great example of how that works. So that's it. Thanks for watching.